This is what freedom feels like. This is what heaven sounds like. We praise you. Come on. Yeah, this is what living looks like. This is what freedom feels like. This is what heaven sounds like. We praise you. We praise you. This is what living looks like. This is what freedom feels like. This is what heaven sounds like. We praise you. We praise you. This is what living looks like. This is what freedom feels like. This is what heaven sounds like. We praise you. We praise. We'll see you break down every wall. We'll watch the giants fall. For fear cannot survive when we praise you. The God of breakthroughs on our side, forever lifted high. With all creation cries, God, we praise you. Come on, we'll sing. We'll see you break down every wall. We'll watch the giants fall. For fear cannot survive when we praise you. The God of breakthroughs on our side, forever lifted high. With all creation cries, God, we praise you. Oh, we praise you. Oh, we praise you. Oh, yeah, we praise you. Oh, how we praise you. Come on, lift it up.
Good morning and welcome to Trinity Assembly Online. My name is Vicki and I serve as one of the pastors here. Maybe you're a longtime attendee of Trinity, or maybe you're checking out our church for the first time. Either way, we encourage you to head over to our website. It's a wonderful resource for you. You'll find lots of information about who we are, what we believe, but you'll also be able to find links that can connect you to people during this time of social distancing. Today's scripture reading comes from Psalm 16, verses 5 through 11.
The Lord is my chosen portion and my cup. You hold my law. The lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Indeed, I have a beautiful inheritance.
I bless the Lord who gives me counsel. In the night, also my heart instructs me. I have set the Lord always before me.
Because he is at my right hand, I shall not be shaken. Therefore my heart is glad, and my whole being rejoices, and my flesh also dwells secure.
For you will not abandon my soul to Sheol, or let your Holy One see corruption. You make known to me the path of life.
In your presence are fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore.
I raise a hallelujah in the presence of my enemies. I raise a hallelujah, oh, louder than the unbelief. Come on, sing out ours. I raise a hallelujah, oh, my weapon is a melody. I raise a hallelujah. Oh, heaven comes to fight for me. Come on, you sing it. And I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. 'Cause death is defeated, oh, the King is alive. Oh. Come on, we sing. And I raise a hallelujah with everything inside of me. And I raise a hallelujah. mystery. And I raise a hallelujah. Come on, you tell it. Yeah, I fear you lost your hold on me. Oh, and I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, on the King is alive. Come on, I want you to sing it out with me. Here we go, sing a little louder. Oh, sing a little louder, sing a little louder, sing a little louder, sing a little louder. Oh, sing a little louder, sing a little louder. Oh, sing a little louder. We're gonna sing a little louder, sing a little louder. In the presence of my enemies, I'll sing a little louder, louder than the unbelief. Sing a little louder. My weapon is a melody. Yeah, sing a little louder. Heaven comes to fight for me. Sing a little louder. In the presence of my enemies, sing a little louder. Louder than the unbelief, sing a little louder. My weapon is a melody, sing a little louder. On heaven comes to fight for me, sing a little louder. And I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. And louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. 'Cause death is defeated, oh, the King is alive. I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, oh, the King is alive. And I raise a hallelujah. I raise a hallelujah. We lift up our song, and I raise a hallelujah. Oh, we lift it loud, and I raise a hallelujah. Oh, we lift it loud, louder than the unbelief. Let the King of my be the mountain where I run, the fountain I drink from. Oh, he is my song. Let the King of my heart be the shadow where I hide, the ransom for my life. Oh, he is my song. And you are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, let the King of my heart be the wind inside my sails, the anchor in the waves. Oh, he is my song. Come on. Yeah, let the King of my heart be the fire inside my veins. He's the echo of my days. Oh, he is my song. You are good, never gonna let me down. And you're never gonna let me down. Come on, remind yourself today. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me. Come on, you'll never. You're never gonna let me down. Oh, you're faithful. You're never gonna let me down. You promised God that you're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. 'Cause you are good. You're good. Oh, you are good. Yes, you're good. Oh, you are good. You're good. Oh, you are good. Yes, I know you're good. Oh, come on, you're never gonna let me down. Oh, you are. You're never gonna let me down. Oh, you're never gonna let me down. Oh, you're never gonna let me down. 'Cause you are good. You're good. Oh, you are good. You're good. Oh, you are good. Yes, you're good. Oh, you are good. You're good. Yes. You know, church, the word says that he who promised is faithful. When we sing songs like this, it really just quickens our hearts again to remember he's always faithful. He'll never let you down. He's always good, always kind. So as we just take a moment to just let his presence come in, just let those truths just wash over you today, that he who promised is faithful. He's faithful to complete what he started. He's faithful to bring you through every storm. He's faithful to walk you, like Isaiah says, through deep waters. He's faithful. When we sing, you are. 'Cause you are good. You're good. Whoa. You are good. Yes, you're good. Oh, you are good. You're good. Oh, you are good. You're good. Oh, come on, you are. 'Cause you are good. You're good. Oh, you are good. You're good. Come on. Yeah, oh, you are good. You're good. Oh, you are good. Yes, you're good. Oh, come on, you're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. are good. Oh, you are good. You're good. Oh, you are good. You're good. Oh, you are good. You're good. You're always good. You're always good through every trial and every place. Place our faith on the rock. We won't be shaken, 'cause you are good. You're good. Oh, one more time, just say that. You're good. Oh, yeah, right where you are, lift it up. You're good. You're good. Oh, you are good. You're good. Oh, you are good. You're good. Oh, yes, you are.
The Bible is not a series of disconnected stories. It is a single narrative in which every story, every character points beyond itself to one who is greater. The story of Adam and Eve is not just about the first man and woman. There is a true and better Adam who passed the test in the garden and whose obedience is ascribed to us. There is a true and better Abel who, though innocently slain, has blood that cries out not for our condemnation, but for our acquittal. There is a true and better Abraham who answered the call of God to leave all the comfortable and familiar and go out into the void to create a new people of God. There is a true and better Isaac, the son of laughter, of grace, who was not just offered up by his father on the mount, but was truly sacrificed for us all. There is a true and better Jacob, who wrestled and took the blow of justice we deserve, so we, like Jacob, only receive the wounds of grace that wake us up and discipline us. There is a true and better Joseph, who at the right hand of the king forgives those who betrayed and sold him and uses his new power to save them. There is a true and better Moses who stands in the gap between the people and the Lord and who mediates a new covenant. There is a true and better rock of Moses, who struck with the rod of God's justice now gives us water in the desert. There is a true and better Job, the truly innocent sufferer, who then intercedes for and saves his foolish friends. There is a true and better David, whose victory becomes his people's victory, though they never lifted a stone to accomplish it themselves. There is a true and better Esther, who didn't just risk losing an earthly palace, but lost the ultimate heavenly one, who didn't just risk his life, but gave his life to save his people. There is a true and better Jonah, who was cast out into the storm so that we could be brought in. There is a true and better Passover lamb, innocent, perfect, helpless, slain so the angel of death will pass over us. He's the true temple, the true prophet, the true priest, the true king, the true sacrifice, the true lamb, the true light, and the true bread. The Bible is not a series of disconnected stories. It is a single narrative that points to one person, Jesus.
Hey everyone, thanks for being with us this morning. My name is David and I serve at Trinity as one of the pastors. At Trinity, we value the next generation. And as you know by now, Pastor Vicky and her team have been putting out videos every Sunday and also a midweek video on Thursdays. Wednesday nights, there's been videos coming out for boys and for girls, and it's all available for you online. And so I want to encourage you to use those resources as a discipleship tool with your own children. We also want to pause and just take time to give. And I want to say thank you so much for those of you who have been giving during this season. I know it's been a challenging season for many of us, but God has been just causing us to be faithful and generous. And because of your giving, we're able to continue our support of missionaries and ministries both in our country and all around the world. Just before we watch this week's announcements, let me just mention that today we have a special guest speaker. His name is Jared Berry. Jared is the Director of Youth and Chi Alpha Ministries for the state of New York with the Assemblies of God. And I'm so glad that he gets to wrap up our series on Esther. And I'm also very excited about a new series we're going to begin next week called Union, the Life You Can Have in Christ. It's going to be a 4-week series. I sincerely believe it might be the most important series that we're going to be doing during this time for us to understand what it means to be united with Christ. Can't wait for it. Here are this week's announcements.
Good morning, church family. Thanks for being with us this week. My name's Josh. I'm going to be sharing this week's announcements with you. Every week, we like to take time to celebrate some of our team members. These are people who give of themselves to help serve and strengthen our church family and community. This week, we'd like to celebrate Ed and Jesse Lorenzo. Inside of Trinity, Ed serves as one of our Inside Out Youth Ministry event staffers, and Jesse serves as a leader on the Trinity Kids team. Outside of Trinity, Ed continues living on mission by protecting our U.S.-Canadian border as a U.S. Border Patrol agent, and Jesse continues living on mission by caring for the pets of our community as a veterinarian assistant. Ed and Jesse, from everyone here at Trinity, we want to extend a warm thank you for everything that you do here. This week at Trinity Kids, your kids are learning to know Jesus. Parents, remember that you can find videos for this week and past weeks related to Trinity Kids or Inside Out Ministries at the Trinity Next Gen YouTube page. The leadership at Trinity are carefully and prayerfully planning and preparing for a reopening. Please continue to pray for our pastors and leaders as they make the decisions to open as soon and as safe as possible. When we do reopen, we will need people to serve on clean teams before, between, and after Sunday morning services. If you are willing to serve on one of these clean teams, please email a pastor. During this time apart, there are still opportunities for us to sing together, to grow together, and to pray together each week. Our time of singing with Pastor Antonia are Monday nights from 7 to 7:45 on Facebook. Grow groups take place on Wednesday nights from 8 to 8:45 on Zoom, and they'll reflect the message that we learn and talk about here on Sunday mornings. Our all-church prayer meeting runs from 8 to 8:30 on Saturday nights, also on Zoom. You can find links for these events by visiting the COVID-19 page on our church website. Even during this time apart, we can still take advantage of these opportunities to come together. This morning, Pastor Jared Berry is concluding our series from Esther. He'll be speaking out of Esther, chapters 8 through 10.
Hey everybody, so great to be with you this morning. My name is Jared and I'm excited to be able to close out this Esther series with you. Before we jump into the text, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever had a moment in your life when you had a vision of something you were going to do? Maybe it was going on a vacation, or maybe it was an anniversary, or just what a lazy Saturday morning would look like. And you had a vision, right? You had a thing in your mind. You were picturing what it was going to look like, and you were imagining it. And then somebody else had a very different vision, and your visions collided. I remember when this happened to me, one of the most prominent times this happened in my life is we had our first child, Judah. He was about 3 months old, and we were getting ready to go on vacation. And we were so exhausted because my son did not sleep through the night for 2 years. And so we were so exhausted, we were so looking forward to vacation. And I started to, in my mind, have this vision of what our vacation would look like. I remember imagining that I would get to sleep in, I would get to rest, and I'd get to catch up and feel so rejuvenated and come back to work like ready to go. And this vision started building and building and building as I anticipated this vacation. And my wife and I, we lived in Long Island, New York at the time, when we had to drive to Vermont to visit my parents. And so we decide we're going to leave at 8 at night, drive through the night, because, again, he was a horrible driver, horrible sleeper. And we'll get in about 2 in the morning. And so we do that, and the drive is terrible. But the whole time I'm thinking to myself, vacation's going to be great. I have this vision, right, of what it's going to be. And we finally get there at 2 in the morning, and Judah's kind of restless. And by the time we get him down and get into bed, it's about 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, man, that was terrible, but at least I know I'm on vacation. And then 6 o'clock comes around. And I remember hearing him cry in the crib next to us and waking up to being absolutely mortified and realizing that my vision for this vacation had come crashing down. I turned to my wife, and we still joke about it today. I turned to my wife, and it was in one of those sleepy stupors that you've been in. She kind of starts to nudge me. You know, this spouses, we do this when we're really, really tired. You can't even say words, so you just start to like groan and, tell me to get up. And she starts nudging me and pushing me, and I'm looking over at him like, dude, are you serious? We've only been in bed for 3 hours. And I turned to my wife, and I said, babe, I'm on the edge, and I don't know what's on the other side. It was this profound moment where I was so sleep deprived, and worst of all, the vision I had for this vacation came crashing down because I realized something that every parent knows. Once you have small children, vacations are no longer about rest. They are only about making experiences and moments to remember. They are not about rest. And in that moment, it was like my vision for this vacation totally came in contact with Judah's vision for this vacation, and you can imagine which vision won out. This idea of competing visions, right? And I think it's true not only of silly things like vacations, but I actually think it's true of our lives. Believe it or not, you have a vision for your life. You have a vision for how you're going to live your life, what matters in life, what things you're going to pursue, right? And not only do you have a vision, but all around you are competing visions. When you watch movies or TV shows, they have a vision for life. When you talk to your coworkers or your bosses, there's a vision for life. All around you are competing visions for how you should live your life. And the question is, what vision are you living? Now, you may think that doesn't matter, but I would challenge you to say, if there's a God in this world who made you and me, and I think there is, He designed us for a purpose, which means He actually has a vision for our life. And so what vision we're living out should matter more to us than anything else. And there's a chance today that you may be sitting there, and there's a chance that you may be living a vision that is not the vision that God has designed for you. And I don't know about you, but that matters to me. And so this morning I want to encourage you as we look at the book of Esther, let's take a look at what vision we're living out. And maybe today God would speak to your heart and challenge you to take on a new one. I want to read to you in the book of Esther. We're going to look at chapter 8. And as we close this series, I'm going to read a couple scriptures. If you're getting out your Bibles, we'll also have it up on the screen for you. But if you're ready, turn to someone who you're sitting next to or comment on the screen. Tell them, yeah, let's do this thing, all right? So book of Esther, chapter 8, I'm going to start at verse 1. Here's what it says. That same day, King Xerxes gave Queen Esther the estate of Haman, the enemy of the Jews. And Mordecai came into the presence of the king, for Esther had told how he was related to her. The king took off his signet ring, which he had reclaimed from Haman, and presented it to Mordecai. And Esther appointed him over Haman's estate. Esther again pleaded with the king, falling at his feet and weeping. She begged him to put an end to the evil plan of Haman the Agagite, which he had devised against the Jews. Then the king extended the gold scepter to Esther, and she arose and stood before him. This morning, as we look at this text, I want to share with you two competing visions. We're going to look at the vision of Haman and the vision of Esther. So first thing, let's dive into the vision of Haman. Now, if you've not been watching the whole series, I want to encourage you to go back. But if you haven't, we're going to refresh the story a little bit. Or maybe you have, but it's good to find out how did we get to this point in the story. So if you remember, we're introduced to this king named King Xerxes. He's the king of this Persian empire, and he's kind of a crazy guy. And through a series of events, he decides he needs a new wife. And during this pursuit, which lasts a couple of years, we're introduced to Esther. And Esther is a Jew. She's an orphan. She's a refugee. And she's raised by this guy named Mordecai, who is a family member, and he becomes like a father to her. And we find out that Mordecai and Esther are Jewish, although nobody knows about it. And so Esther ends up being selected by King Xerxes to be his next queen. And so she's in the palace, and her life has really kind of turned around. And during that time, we're introduced to another character whose name is Haman. And Haman is kind of this noble, he's this evil guy in the story, and he ends up being elevated to the number 2 position in the kingdom. And King Xerxes says everybody's got to honor him. And so as Haman's entering the kingdom, everyone's bowing down and they're honoring him, except for Mordecai. Mordecai refuses to do it. And we begin to see Haman's reaction. As everyone's looking around, they're going, Haman, are you seeing this guy disrespect you? He's not bowing down. He's not honoring you the way that you should. Are you seeing this? And Haman becomes so furious and angry that he decides he's not just going to kill Mordecai, but he's going to kill all the Jewish people in the land. And as the story unfolds, we start to reveal the vision that Haman has for his life. Right? Haman goes on to the king and he devises this plan where he's going to get the king to sign a royal edict to, on a certain day, allow all the enemies of the Jews to kill them, and the Jews are not allowed to defend themselves. Now, Haman's life, you start to see this man who is desperate, right? He's desperate for position. He's desperate for power. He's desperate for authority. And you can ask the question, why would he react so angrily towards Mordecai for not bowing down? And the answer is that all of Haman's life has been pursuing position, pursuing power. And he finally was at the number 2 position, and Mordecai comes in and refuses to bow down, and all that Haman had worked for his entire life was now at risk. Haman's vision for his life was all about him, right? The thing that mattered most with him and his family, he had to work and earn to try to gain significance, worth, and value. Another way to put it was he had to earn his identity. He had to find something that would give him value. And for Haman, that thing was power. It was prestige. It was position. And he was so desperate to have it that when somebody would threaten it like Mordecai, he would do everything and anything to destroy the threat. Now, I remember when I read this for the first time, it was easy. I remember thinking, man, this guy's crazy, right? And in fact, you may be hearing this story and going, Haman's a terrible dude. I can't believe he would do something like that. I certainly would never kill somebody or commit genocide, right? It's hard for us to relate to the story of Haman. But before you think that, I want to challenge you that there may be some of us, including myself, who at times in our life actually live out the same vision that Haman did. I remember one night we had some friends over to our house, and my kids who are young were kind of acting up, and one of them was being extra disrespectful. And it wasn't just that they were being disrespectful, but they were doing it loud enough so that my friends who were downstairs, who were also parents, could hear. And so I went upstairs to their room and I started doing, and parents, you know this, or kids, if you have parents, you know this. I started doing like the parent super angry yell, the quiet yell. The yell where like, you know that I'm angry, but I can't be so loud that the people downstairs hear me because I don't want them to think I'm crazy. But it's like, you're going to, you start talking like that. You're like, you're going to get it later. Like it was that type of anger, right? And I remember later on that night after the friends had left and kind of everyone was going to bed, I think I'm like, why did I react that way? What about that moment made me so angry? Because parents, you know that there's a difference between when your kid acts up at home when no one's there to see it versus when they act up in Target or Walmart, right? And I remember thinking, why did I get so angry? And as I started to think about it, what I realized was in that moment, what I hated most was not that my kid was disrespectful. It was that they threatened the perception that people had of me. I was worried that the friends I had downstairs would think I was a bad parent, would think I couldn't control my kids. I wasn't a disciplinarian. I didn't have respect and honor. I was worried about what they thought. I was worried about my position of power within my own family. And when my kids were disrespecting me publicly, it was a threat to the things that I thought gave me worth and value. I was living out the Haman vision, that my life was about pursuing things that would validate my existence, give me a sense of worth and value and a sense of identity. Now, some of you may be like Haman. Maybe for you it is found through power and prestige. Maybe at work you're thinking, how can I climb the ladder? Right? How can I get into that position of authority and power? But maybe you're like, I'm not really Haman. Maybe for you it's approval. Maybe you're desperate for people to like you. You're desperate for people to think you're great, and you'll do anything to get your reputation up. And if anyone threatens that reputation, you'll do anything to maintain it, right? Maybe for you it's comfort. Maybe you want to fill your life with stuff and things and toys and money, and the worst thing could be to be in pain or be in discomfort. And so for you, you'll do anything to make sure you have enough things in life. Or maybe for you it's security. It's that sense of the bigger the number in my bank account is, the better I feel. Or the more in control of the situation, the better I feel. And I'll do anything to defend it. See, the truth is, if we're honest with ourselves, most of us, oftentimes in our life, are living out a Haman vision. It's a vision that's not concerned for anybody beyond ourselves and our own family. It's not worried about the world. It's not worried about what's happening around us, the hurt, the pain, the suffering. It's a vision that is consumed with elevating ourselves to a position where we can feel worth and value. It's the Haman vision. So Haman goes on and he gets the king to sign this edict, and they cast lots. It's this random kind of like rolling of the dice to determine which day the enemies of the Jews are going to get to kill the Jews. And the story goes that Mordecai hears about this, and he's so upset that he reaches out to Queen Esther and he says, you've got to do something, you've got to step in. And so Queen Esther decides to risk everything that she has, including her own life, and she goes to the king. And of course, at that time, you know that you couldn't just go into the king's presence without being invited. And so she risked her life, and sure enough, though, the king extended his gold scepter, spared her life, and allowed her to come in. And she, through a series of events, ends up exposing this plot that Haman had devised to kill both her, because she was Jewish, and her entire people. And we come to chapter 8 where King Xerxes realizes this, and in this great reversal of events, he now kills Haman, gives all of Haman's stuff to Queen Esther. Mordecai is now promoted to this level of leadership and authority in the kingdom. And for Esther and for Mordecai, there's this great reversal of events in their life, and now everything for them personally is sitting amazing, right? Like they have all the power, all the authority. They have more wealth than they had before. They have position. Esther's been spared by the king. Everything is looking great for them. It's an amazing moment. And then we come to chapter 8 in verse 3. And I think this is such a pivotal moment in the story. It would have been so easy for Esther to live out the vision that Haman had, which is, I'm going to look out for me and my family, and I'm going to protect the things that I have that give me worth and value. How easy would it have been for Esther to forget her people in this very moment? But instead, what we see in verse 3, it says, Esther again pleaded with the king, falling at his feet and weeping. So Esther, in this moment, decides that although she has everything a person could want to give them a sense of worth and value, unlike Haman, she's going to risk all of it in order to plead for the king to spare her people. Esther had a different vision. It was a vision that involved more than just her own life and her own family. It was a vision that recognized the hurt and the need and the brokenness of the people around her. It was a vision that recognized that there was a whole world around her, that God was doing something. He had a plan and he was working. And the question is, how do we know this, right? Why does Esther live a different vision than Haman? And I think the answer is given in chapter 9, where we see this idea of a celebration called Purim. And Purim was this celebration that was based on the very idea of the moments in life that seem like chance, right? These moments in life that seem like coincidence are actually not coincidence at all. They are God's providence at work, God's sovereignty at work, God living out and making his plan happen in his people's lives. And that story becomes more true because as the story goes on, Esther tells the king, and the king says, all right, here's what I'll do. I can't reverse my edict, but I'll put a new edict out that the Jews can defend themselves when attacked. And sure enough, we see this kind of divine victory given to the Jews where they overcome all of their enemies throughout the entire region of Persia. And it's this amazing thing. And it culminates now with this ceremony celebrating this fact. That moments in life that seem like God is absent, he's not. God is working, God is moving, and God is sovereign. And I think Esther understood this. She understood this fact, that in the moments of life when you're at your lowest, God is still there. When Mordecai was outside the gate and he had nothing, and his life was at risk, and all of his people looked like they were going to die, God was still working. In the moments that seem like coincidence and seem like there is no hope and there's no way to break through, God is still working. And if you're today and you're going through a challenging time with Corona, and maybe you've lost your job, maybe finances are a challenge, maybe relationships at home are falling apart, you can know today, despite how it feels, that God is still working. Despite what the circumstances look like, God is still working. He's not abandoned you and He's not forgotten about you. But the other thing that this celebration reminds our hearts of, and that Esther, I think, understood, is God is working when you're in the low places, but He's also working when you're in the high places. See, Esther had moved from an orphan who was a refugee to now being the queen who had tremendous favor. Mordecai had been working from being essentially nothing to being one of the most trusted number twos in the entire kingdom, only under the king. But they understood that their position, how they got there, was from God. They realized that it wasn't their hard work, it wasn't their talent or their ability, it wasn't all the stuff that they did. Their position of authority, the position that they had been given, the influence that was around them had been given to them by God for such a time as this to do something with, to accomplish His plan and purpose. God had put them where He had put them to be a part of His plan of rescuing His people. And Esther understood this, right? She realized this. I'm not here on my own volition. I'm here because of God. And so today, if things are going great in your life, and maybe if you're in a great position, it's very easy to take all the credit for ourselves and to think, well, if other people had made better decisions, maybe right now if they had more in their savings like I did, and they had done this and that, and it's easy to take credit and to view our position as our own, as something we have done and we have created, when in reality, what Esther knew and what this story tells us is that all we have is from God. Whether we're in the low places or in the high places, God wants to use us to be a part of His plan of rescuing and redeeming His people. That's the story of Esther. That's the vision of Esther. So today, what that means for you and I is, no matter where we're at, we have to assess what vision we're living out. And maybe for us right now, we're living a vision that is more like Haman's, that is consumed with our own life. It's consumed with what's happening to us. It's consumed with our own problems and our own family. And we're unaware of the bigger reality that the creator of the universe is at work and He's doing something and He wants us to be a part of it. See, God wants to move our hearts from a Haman vision to an Esther vision, which says, my life is yours. No matter what I have to sacrifice, no matter what I have to give up, it's not about what I can get for me. It's about what I can give for you. And you may be sitting there and saying, man, that seems hard. In fact, that seems impossible. And you may be right. You are right. It is hard. How do we do it? See, the beauty of this story is Esther and Mordecai are not meant to be the heroes. In fact, a lot of scholars say there's a lot of stuff that they may have done wrong. They're not meant to be the heroes of the story. In fact, they're meant to point us to the true hero, to a better hero. Jesus left all that He deserved, was born into poverty, into persecution, right? Jesus left perfect approval, perfect affection. He had the world as His footstool, and yet He left it to be born as a baby, born in a manger, born into poverty, born into death and persecution. And then He goes and lives this perfect life, the life that you and I should live but don't. Surrounded by Haman, surrounded by people who wanted to destroy Him and wanted to take Him. And Jesus never, ever lives for Himself, never, ever works for what He deserves or takes for what is owed to Him. Instead, He lives a selfless life for those around Him. And eventually, He goes to the cross. And on the cross, He takes on the penalty that Haman deserves. He takes on the penalty that you and I, because our hearts are so often like Haman's, that you and I deserve for our sin, our brokenness, all the times that we're selfish, that we live for ourselves. Jesus on the cross takes that penalty that we deserve onto Himself, and He imparts onto us the identity that we could never earn. Jesus rescued and redeemed us, And now in that moment, when we think about the cross, it reveals to us not only is our identity secured, but it reveals to us that the creator of the world has a mission. He has a plan to bring heaven to earth, to rescue and redeem all people, to bring hope to those who are hopeless, to bring joy to those who are broken. And he's invited you and I to be a part of it. Your life matters more than just what we can get for ourselves. Your life matters because God has invited you to join in his mission. The question for us is, what vision of life do we want to live out? One for ourselves or one for him? And my prayer today is that the more beautiful Jesus becomes to you, the more beautiful his mission will become. Would you join me as we close in a song and remind our hearts of how awesome Jesus really is?
Who am I that the highest King would welcome me? And I was lost, but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. And who the Son sets free, oh, is free. His grace runs deep. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Oh, yes, I am. Come on, we sing, I'm chosen. And I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. And you are for me, not against me. Oh, I am who you say I am. Come on, chosen, not forsaken. Oh, I am who you say I am. And you are for me, you're not against me. Oh, I am who you say I am. Oh, yes. Oh, I am who you say I am. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. My Father, and in my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. One more time, my Father's.
Thanks so much for being with us. If you would like prayer or want to respond to this message in some way, there'll be info on the screen about how you can contact us. We'd love to hear from you. We also want to invite you out this Wednesday night and every Wednesday night to be a part of our Grow groups, where we're going to have some discussion questions and talk about what did this message mean to us in our lives. We love you. We appreciate you. Have a blessed day. We'll see you next time.